Welcome to episode 3 of Luchona as Today's episode is going to be called You Are Not How You Were Raised. But before I dive deep into this episode, I want to update you guys on everything has been playing out with my dad's status, where he stands now. He's in immigration hold. Obviously, I was very vulnerable with you guys and I share that he chose to self-deport. Nothing has changed in that department. He is still heading out to Mexico between yesterday and September 22. I am really hoping that he's in Mexico way before then, because I am assuming that just being in that detention center is not the best experience. But everything in my life at the moment has seemed to calm down a lot more. I'm obviously still going to his apartment and trying to get just the last bit of things he has there sold. My last day there is going to be either this Thursday or this weekend to just wrap it up and close that chapter of his life. Not in the best way, but every single time that I am about to close a chapter in my life or I'm about to get rid of things, I don't know why I have this feeling to do this every single time and to thank the universe for whatever it is for giving me that opportunity. I just give gratitude to the world and then just let it go. And I feel like even though this was not my apartment, this was not my situation, it is my dad's situation. I want to be able to be at his apartment for my own part, just give God and give gratitude for allowing him to spend these 25 years here in the States and for giving him the experiences and just closing that chapter for him in the best way possible, asking God to continue to give him light in his way while he's in Mexico. So I just really want to open that chapter in his life. He goes to Mexico with blessings and gratitude. Obviously, it's not him doing it, but I know I have the power to do that. I don't know why. Something in me has always been like that, and I have always done that just with my own things too. Since I'm the one in charge of everything in my dad's apartment and closing it down, selling, I want to be able to do that for him, and that way he's got my blessings once he arrives to the motherland. So that is my perspective, and that is where I am at this week with that situation. I know I told you guys I wanted to bring in a little guest, but that little guest is not available right now. She is way too busy. So I really just wanted to take a moment and vent even more and take this opportunity to be able to just deep dive even more into my life and what has led me to who I am today. That is why this episode is going to be called You Are Not Who You Were Raised, because I'm just going to pretty much give you guys a rundown of what my life has been in the past 25 years. I have seen so many people make that an excuse of, oh, my dad was this, my mom was that, I was raised like this, so that's why I'm like that. I also wanted to get very real with you guys. All of that just ties in with how I was raised and just giving you guys a rundown of my background, my story from coming to the United States, my parents separating. Many of you guys don't know this, but as I was growing up, mom, my brother, and we literally lived from one woman's shelter to another woman's shelter, and that was only because my parents were both abusive to one another, especially my dad. He was very abusive. He used to be an alcoholic. So that is the reason why I am going to just talk about that. But most importantly, I wanted to share that just because I was raised in that environment, it didn't mean that I had to become it, and that I chose to not repeat the same patterns that my parents did. This episode is also for anybody who has felt trapped in their childhood, in their parents' mistakes, or even the cycles that they grew up in. Just want to say that you can break free from all of that and you can rewrite your story as you get older. Once you hit adulthood and you have nobody telling you what to do at all times of the day, you have full control of your destiny, of your choices, even the people that you choose to hang around with. I also wanted to read you guys a story that has always stuck with me. When I read the story, I was like, oh my God, that is exactly how it was with how I was raised. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have heard about this story. Maybe you have not, but if you haven't, really take a moment to think about it. And if this resonates with you, make sure you comment down below. There's a story about two twin brothers who were raised by obviously the same father. And this story literally always stuck with me because actually, if you have siblings, it is the perfect example of you have full control of your story, of your adulthood, of how you want story in life to go. I found the perfect article, so I am going to read you guys. This is a story about one father and his two sons with 3 lessons for all of us. It's honestly a big life skill that I believe everybody should acquire. Every single time that I hear someone say that they are the way they are because of how they were raised, I think that's not taking accountability of your own actions. Being able to have accountability of your own actions says a lot about who you are and about your maturity. So let's get into the story. There's an old story about 2 boys who had a father who was an alcoholic. They grew up into young men. One son became an alcoholic. They asked him, "What choice did you have and why are you the way you are?" His response was, "I grew up watching my father be an alcoholic." His brother, on the other hand, never touched a drop of alcohol, and they asked him the same question, and his answer was, "How could I? Look what it did to my father." From this simple story, we learn 3 lessons. We are all role models. Like it or not, other people look at how we behave and model their lives after us. It's something that we keep in mind for all the people we care about and influence. I think that's so true for a lot of people. A lot of people do learn by making the mistakes on their own, and everybody also learns from watching their friends make the mistakes. We can learn from others. It's much better to learn a lesson from someone else's experience than to have to experience it ourselves. And that even applies to our parents. They aren't perfect either, and others, it won't be. Either way, we can take away direction and how to live our lives. We all have the power to choose. We don't always get to choose what happens to us or around us, but we choose how we respond. We can't control the circumstances, but we have total and complete control over our reaction. These 2 sons in the same place with the same circumstances, however, they choose completely different paths as a result of their situation. That's exactly what I want to make my podcast about today. Share with you guys my little life story of growing up. Obviously, I grew up in Mexico up until I was about 7 years old when my mom decided to come to the United States with my brother and I. My partner's biological dad was already in the States. I honestly do not remember my life in Mexico. It was all a blur. I try to remember as much as I can. There's bits and pieces that I do remember, but for the most part, I don't remember half of my life there. I think what I did get to see coming into the United States was reality and was how life really was with my parents. In Mexico, we did live with my grandparents, so I feel like they held off a lot of their arguments or just in general, like what the relationship was really like. Everything was true colors when we came to the United States. I remember maybe about, I was 8, 9 years old. Everything just started unfolding. My mom was going through not just mental abuse, but physical abuse. My dad was drinking a lot. And just so we make it clear, I love my parents equally. I don't hold any grudges towards anybody. And I will never be. I'm not the type of person to hold huge grudges on people, especially my parents. That is for God and for karma to handle them, not me. My story, what I'm about to talk about, is not to bash on my dad or my mom. It's more of like, I want you guys to see what I actually went through and what my childhood was really like. So when we came to the United States, I just remember 2 years living here. That is when my parents' true relationship colors started showing, when I started realizing that their relationship was so toxic. We obviously were very unstable coming into the United States. We would live with my uncles up until my biological dad got an apartment with us. Just things started unfolding very quickly there, where I started just seeing constant physical abuse towards my mom, to the point where there was one time where we were even, when I say we, it's my brother and I, we were in a situation where we could have gotten killed. His drinking problem was so big. I don't know what type of issues he was going through. I don't know what the relationship issues were about. I just remember the constant physical abuse that my mom was going through with my dad. And from my understanding, she was going through this abuse behind closed doors in Mexico. I don't know if my grandparents actually knew. Maybe it would happen when they were not in their house. Maybe it didn't happen when they were under my grandparents' roof, because I do remember going back and forth to my dad's mom, which is my other grandma, and my mom's parents. I feel like the abuse would mostly happen when we were not with my mom's parents. This physical abuse would happen since my parents were a teenage couple. I don't know why my mom decided to stick through it and have 3 kids with my dad. I'm sure I've talked to you guys about that. I also had an older sister. She's about like maybe 2 years older than me, but she unfortunately passed away. I didn't get to meet her. Going back to when we were already here, like, I felt like we saw a lot of that abuse, and that was part of like my brothers and I's biggest trauma. Obviously, I try to block it as an adult. I say it doesn't affect me, but I feel like it does show up in my relationships, which we will get into later in other episodes. I say it doesn't affect me, but I learned from my mom's mistakes to not put up with it, to not put up with any type of mental, physical, and emotional abuse. Obviously, my mom had a breaking point, and where she said that enough was enough, because there was one time it got so bad. Everything happened so fast. I just remember us grabbing all of our items in black plastic bags, and we ended up going to a women's shelter. From what I can recollect, we would live in women's shelters back to back to back. It was a good, I want to say maybe 5 women's shelters that we would flip-flop from, and our life was very much unstable for the first few years. And the worst part is that my mom had no one to lean on. She obviously had her brother here, but I feel like that wasn't much of like a support system for her. Grandparents obviously did not know anything that my mom was going through. My grandparents also didn't know that we were living in women's shelters. I just remember like sharing rooms with other women and their kids. I remember one time some lady went into our bedroom and stole a couple items from us. Obviously my mom just stayed quiet. It was something that we would have to go through living in these type of homes. From my childhood, I thought these homes were very like cool. They would keep most of the time they would keep us kids busy, because women would have meetings. They would have more of like a therapy session all together and just pretty much vent to one another. And they would take us kids to like a different room where we would watch movies, or that we would have a big bus come tutor us with like our homework. So growing up in those women's shelters, I feel like my brother and I they would keep us busy to like have fun, up until maybe I was like 9 or 10 when my mom and my stepdad got together and they finally got their first apartment. And that is when our brothers and I life really started getting very stable. Obviously we did move a couple times, but it wasn't as bad as when we were in women's shelters. I honestly don't know how my mom did it on her own. My mom really did have no support system, not the same support system that I obviously have with her. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of why my mom is the way she is, and she is a present grandmother, and it's obviously because of everything that she went through while she was here. I really did learn from her mistakes, and we will get into that in the next few episodes, but I also learned from my dad's mistakes, his alcohol problem. Like obviously, I like going out and drinking with my friends, like in special occasions or when we go to restaurants, but I am not the type of person that will drink or will buy a bottle of wine and keep alcohol in the house just because I want to feel boost or anything like that. I actually do not like how alcohol makes me feel the next day, or even worse, like one of my biggest fears is like getting a DUI. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like a hangover where you feel so guilty about drinking and like getting home late and stuff like that, but I don't like the feeling of it. So that's another reason why I just do not like to go out to clubs and drinking. Obviously, when I was younger, when I was 20, 21, I would go all out. I went crazy. So I feel like now as an adult, I don't have the necessity to even do that. I just feel like I learned so much from my parents' mistakes, and obviously I am continuing to learn. I have made so many mistakes as an adult that even though I wish I can go back and fix them, I do not let that determine what I'm going to be doing in my future. I have made a mistake of obviously giving my kids two different dads, and I still don't think that makes me who I am, and it doesn't define what my future is going to look like. In fact, it has made me even stronger, and it has made me want to be able to do way better in life, because if when I see my life and the mistakes that I made, I'm like, I've already made those mistakes. I've already felt like I failed. Well, it's time for me to prove myself that I am able to do it. Even if it wasn't with them, I'm gonna be able to make it on my own. And so I just feel like there's just so many life lessons that you go through and so many fails that you need to understand that you cannot stay stuck in that situation for a very long time. You have to process what you went through and then get yourself back up and try to do better on your own, or try to make things better to just make up for that mistake. I just feel like I'm the type of person that I have learned from so many other people's mistakes. Obviously, I have learned from my own mistakes, but just watching people make their mistakes, it's like, it's a lesson learned from me. For example, things that I've also been through with my kids' fathers, like those are mistakes that I see and I'm just like, holy crap, I never would have thought in my entire life that I would end up with men like that. Obviously, they're not bad men. They're great fathers, but obviously they're not the type of man that I envision myself with. I always say I don't have any trauma from my childhood. I don't think what my dad and my mom went through, or what my brother and I went through with my parents, impacted my life, or it didn't affect me. But deep down, I do feel like there are things that affected me, and that is why I have chosen to live the life that I've lived. And obviously it's not as bad as what my parents went through or my mom went through, but it is to the point where I still made the mistakes. Whenever I chose to decide to be a single mother, I really thought about it so deeply before I was like, you know what, I want to do this alone. I was practically doing it alone when I was with Lorenzo's dad. I really just wanted to just be set free. I wanted to just actually do it alone without having someone to always worry about like they truly do love me or if they not love me. And so I feel like making that first step of like, okay, I am going to end up doing this alone and I am going to keep going. I am going to just try to do my best. I made a mistake once again. I did not let that define me for the long run, because before I ended things, I had to analyze every single thing and how I was going to do it and what I was going to do with my life. I tried to and then I just kind of put it in my head, like if I'm going to separate from this relationship, I'm going to prove myself that I am going to make it on my own and I'm going to prove myself. And that's exactly what happened when I ended up coming into back to my mom's house. I got right into business, and that was during COVID time. But I felt like so many things ended up just aligning with my life. Once I chose to just not give my energy to the relationship and to something that was just not serving both of us, that is when life truly just started happening for me. I feel like that is what life is about. Like, if you let things define you, if you let things that you went through in your childhood define you as you get older, you're going to continue to make those mistakes. If you have the mentality of, I grew up like that, my parents treated me like this because I saw my dad do that, because I saw my mom do that, like, you are going to just always have that mentality growing up. Or when you're like, oh, I grew up with the bare minimum. Like, it's okay, my mom, we had it worse when we were young. Like, you are just going to continue to live your life as a bare minimum. Once you get out of a situation and you start thinking very small and just very, estás complaciente con donde estás en tu vida, and you're just like, oh, I'm fine here, like I'm gonna stay in the same job, or I don't think I'm gonna end up finding something better, like that is exactly where you're going to be. And I feel like everybody shouldn't have that mindset. I feel like once you actually dream big and you think to your fullest potential and you actually believe in yourself, that is where life is going to eventually take you. Because you went through it, or just because you saw your parents do that, it doesn't mean that you are going to be the same way. Not everything is genetic. Not everything, just because your dad was an alcoholic or your dad was a drug addict, doesn't mean that you're going to have the same habits. When it comes to stuff like that, you have full control of your life because you went through what you went through. Like, you have to go through that, go to therapy, and just move on and write your own story. So if you are someone who is truly just stuck in life right now and you feel like you can't move forward, or feel like you can't think beyond or just reach your full potential, I want you to truly have a moment with yourself. Go on a drive, no radio on, just you, yourself, and your thoughts, and just start thinking about what is it that you truly want. What is it that you want to change about your behavior, what about your habits, about your mindset, because all of that is mindset, behavior. You really have to just truly know yourself. Stop waiting for people. Stop waiting for others to give you that motivation. You really have to just truly just sit with yourself and think, what is it that I want? What is it that I don't like or that I do like? And just start analyzing your future and what is it that you envision for yourself. But just be careful who you tell it to, because I have said this time and time again, not everybody has the same vision as you. Not everybody is going to want the same thing as you. And if you go and tell someone that does not dream big, that is very realistic, because I also feel like people who are realistic do not have big goals and just stay conforme to wherever they are in life. If you're someone who's very optimistic, keep things to yourself, because what you're going to do if you tell someone who doesn't dream as big as you is they're going to shut you off, because obviously they don't believe stuff like that actually happens to people, when in reality it really does. You just have to envision it for yourself and work towards it every single day. It'll be a rough journey, you guys. I'm telling you, it's going to be a rough journey. It's going to be a lonely journey. I probably have lost so many friends throughout high school, coworkers, just because I have truly just wanted to spend time alone, especially after having kids. I feel like after I had kids and I made those mistakes, I did not want to be a failure. I didn't want to be the type of single mom who was like pitying myself and always regretting my mistakes. I really wanted to just get out of that mindset and be able to work on who I am. I really wanted to just reflect on myself and truly just not have anybody to ask their opinion for, because at the end of the day, the only opinion that is going to matter and the only approval that you need is yourself. It is one of the biggest reasons why I have really just been excluded from everything and everybody, because I really just wanted to just get to know myself, and I wanted to heal so many parts of not only my childhood, myself, and my relationships with people. So thank you guys for listening to episode 3 of Luchona as Fuck. I know today's episode was heavy, but I wanted to remind you that you are not who you were raised. Always remember that. You are not who you were raised. Your parents' mistakes, their trauma, their upbringing does not define who you are or what your future looks like. I went from seeing my mom being physically abused to different women's shelters and just having this unstable life as a child. But I chose to learn from their mistakes and trying not to make the same mistakes as I got older. So if you're watching right now and you feel stuck in cycles that don't serve you, just remember that you get to rewrite your story. You are proof of your own survival. You are allowed to recreate something better for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, or you know someone who might need to hear this, make sure you share it with someone who might need to hear this. If you have your own story or you went through something similar growing up, make sure you comment down below, and I cannot wait to share more with you guys on my next episode.